It was a day like any other, yet it felt anything but ordinary. The crowd gathered in the grand hall was buzzing with excitement, waiting for one of the most anticipated speakers of the year. Elon Musk had just stepped onto the stage, his presence commanding attention. The room grew quiet, anticipation building as he took the microphone. Elon was no stranger to being in the spotlight. As the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, he had given speeches to millions, shared groundbreaking innovations, and made headlines time and time again. But this time, something felt different. Amid the sea of adults in suits and business attire, a small voice rose above the noise. "Mr. Musk. I have a question." The voice came from a young girl, no older than 10. She stood alone in the crowd, her wide eyes fixed on Elon, her hand nervously raised. There was a brief pause, a moment of surprise, before the entire room shifted its attention to her. People began to whisper, and some even chuckled under their breath. This wasn't the typical question a CEO was used to receiving, especially not from a child. Elon, ever the professional, glanced toward her, a soft smile on his face. "Yes, young lady? What's your question?" The girl hesitated for just a moment, looking up at him as if searching for the right words. Then, with a look of curiosity and innocence that only a child could muster, she asked, "Why do you wear that necklace? The one with the cross?" The room fell silent. The question was innocent, pure even, yet there was a heaviness to it. Why did he wear that necklace? The cross wasn't just a simple accessory. For Elon, it was something far deeper, something that carried the weight of his past, his beliefs, and his journey through life. As the seconds ticked by, Elon found himself caught off guard. He wasn't expecting a question so personal, so raw. The chuckles from the audience faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. People were waiting for him to respond, to say something that would explain the significance of the cross he wore around his neck. For a moment, he stood there, unsure of how to answer. It wasn't that he was unwilling to share his story, it was just that this necklace had become a part of him in ways he had never shared with the world. It held memories, emotions, and moments of personal struggle that he had kept locked away for years. Then, just as quickly as the silence had settled, a voice broke through it. "Why don't you tell her, Mr. Musk?" The voice came from someone in the audience, perhaps another child, or maybe a parent who saw the moment for what it was, a chance for something real to be shared. And in that moment, Elon knew that the question wasn't just for him, it was for all of them. He looked back at the young girl. Her eyes were wide, filled with an unspoken understanding, as if she knew there was more to his story than just the technology he created or the fame he'd garnered. She wanted to know what made him tick, what shaped him into the man he was today. Elon smiled softly, the weight of his thoughts settling on his shoulders. "Well," he began, his voice steady but carrying a hint of vulnerability, "that necklace is more than just jewelry. It represents something much deeper for me. It's a reminder of the love and faith I was raised with, and of the challenges I've faced in my life. Maybe one day, I'll tell you the whole story." But before he could continue, he paused. Something in her innocent eyes pulled at his heart, urging him to go further, to give her more than just a simple answer. There was a connection there, something almost magical in its purity. The young girl looked at him, waiting, as if she understood the significance of his hesitation. "Do you want to hear the story behind it?" Elon asked, his voice filled with a warmth that had not been there moments ago. Her eyes lit up with a smile that melted any remaining tension in the room. "Yes, please," she replied, her voice filled with genuine curiosity. The audience leaned in. It was clear this wasn't going to be a typical Q&A. In that moment, Elon realized that perhaps the greatest questions in life didn't come from the brightest minds in the room, but from the most innocent hearts. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The room was still, save for the soft rustling of fabric as everyone shifted in their seats. Elon stood at the front of the stage, his fingers lightly tracing the cross around his neck. His mind raced, unsure of how to move forward. This wasn't just a question, it was an invitation to go deeper, to reveal a part of himself that he had kept hidden for years. The young girl, still standing near the front of the room, looked at him expectantly, her wide eyes filled with both wonder and hope. It was as if she believed, even in her innocence, that the story he was about to tell would offer her something more than just a moment of curiosity. It was as if, somehow, the weight of the world had been placed on this small, simple question. Elon cleared his throat and smiled, trying to mask the unease bubbling inside him. It wasn't that he didn't want to share, it was just that this was a side of him he rarely showed. The side of him that believed in things beyond rockets, electric cars, or futuristic technology. A side that connected with something much more human: faith, love, loss. Well, Elon began slowly, his voice steady but tinged with an unfamiliar vulnerability, this necklace has been with me for a long time. It wasn't always about technology or the future. When I was younger, it was about something more personal. The audience leaned in closer. Some of them had come to hear him talk about the next big breakthrough in space exploration, while others wanted to hear his thoughts on artificial intelligence. But now, they were hearing something much more intimate, a glimpse into the man behind the headlines. He looked down at the cross, and for a moment, his mind flashed back to his childhood. He could almost feel the warmth of his mother's hands as she placed the necklace around his neck, her voice filled with love and hope. I was raised in a family that valued faith, Elon continued, his voice quieter now, almost as if he was speaking to himself. And my mother, she gave me this necklace when I was a child. She told me it would remind me of the love and strength that I could always rely on, no matter where life took me. There was a brief pause, and the silence in the room deepened. The audience could feel it, the shift in the atmosphere. This wasn't just a tech mogul talking about his accomplishments. This was a man reflecting on something far more meaningful. Elon shifted his weight slightly, his fingers still gently touching the cross. But, you know, as you grow older, you start to question everything. You start to wonder if faith and love can truly guide you in the harsh world of innovation and competition. I lost sight of that, for a while. He exhaled sharply, a hint of regret in his eyes. And I didn't realize how much I needed that reminder until much later. When things got really tough. The audience was quiet, captivated by his honesty. The young girl's face was full of empathy. She could sense the pain in his words, and she had no idea how much her simple question was unraveling a side of Elon Musk that the world rarely saw. Elon continued, his voice softer now. There was a time when I almost lost everything, my companies, my health, my peace of mind. I found myself in situations that I didn't know how to get out of, and I had to make decisions that would affect the rest of my life. That's when this necklace, and the faith it represented, became important again. The words hung in the air, charged with emotion. Elon's eyes seemed distant now, as if he were reliving those difficult moments. But the girl, she was still there, her small frame standing in front of him, waiting for him to continue. Her patience was a reminder to him that, sometimes, the simplest of questions could unlock the most profound of stories. The cross became more than just a symbol of my faith, he said, his voice steadying as he gathered his thoughts. It became a reminder that even when things are falling apart, even when you think you're alone, there's always something or someone that can help guide you back. As Elon spoke, he realized something: his story wasn't just his own anymore. It was reaching out to the people in the room, the ones who had been so caught up in the world of technology and innovation, the ones who hadn't thought about faith or hope in a long time. But in this moment, they were all connected. They were all hearing the same message. The young girl looked up at him, her expression soft and knowing. So, it's not just a necklace. It's a reminder that we're not alone, right? Elon smiled, his eyes glistening slightly. Exactly. It's a reminder that no matter how hard things get, we have each other. And that's what really matters in the end. The room was still for a moment longer, as if everyone was taking a collective breath, letting the weight of his words sink in. And in that silence, Elon knew that this moment wasn't just a question from a child. It was a turning point for him, too. Maybe it wasn't about the tech. Maybe it wasn't about the next big idea. Maybe it was about something much more profound, connection. The room remained silent, as if everyone was still holding their breath. Elon's words had left an imprint on the audience, but they had left a much deeper one on him. The cross around his neck, the one he'd worn for so long, now felt heavier than it ever had before. But not in a bad way. It felt like a burden he no longer had to carry alone. As Elon glanced at the young girl who had asked him the question, her face still radiated curiosity. She wasn't just looking for an answer. She was searching for something meaningful. And in that moment, he realized she had found it, not just in the necklace, but in his story. The girl gave him a gentle smile. "Thank you for sharing that," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. Elon nodded, trying to push past the lump that had formed in his throat. He was used to answering questions about rockets, Mars, or electric vehicles, questions that demanded logic, precision, and calculated answers. But this was different. This was personal. And it felt oddly liberating. "You're welcome," Elon replied, his voice steadying. "I think sometimes we forget why we started doing the things we do. It's easy to get caught up in the chaos of work, in the race to get ahead. But moments like this remind me why I keep going." For a second, he hesitated. His mind flashed back to those moments of doubt, the sleepless nights when he wondered if the companies he'd built were worth the stress and sacrifice. Was all of it truly making a difference? Or was it just a pursuit of something bigger, something that would always be out of reach? But now, in the presence of this young girl, with her innocent but piercing question, Elon began to realize that there was more to his journey than just innovation. There was meaning in the connections he had made along the way, the people he had met, the love and support from his family, and the unshakable belief that, somehow, his work could change the world. The audience seemed to sense this shift. There was no applause, no cheers. Just a quiet understanding, a collective moment of reflection. It was as if the entire room had been reminded of something they hadn't even realized they'd forgotten. Elon glanced at the girl again. "You know, that necklace wasn't just something I wore to feel connected to my past. It also kept me grounded during some of the most challenging times in my career. When things were looking bleak, when the pressure was too much to handle, I'd look at it and remember that it wasn't all about the end result. It was about the journey, and how I treated people along the way." The girl's eyes sparkled, and she nodded as though she completely understood, as if her question had unlocked something in him that had been waiting to be shared. "You're right," she said thoughtfully. "It's not just about the big things. It's about the little moments, too." Elon smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude toward this young soul who had, in a matter of seconds, taught him something he had been overlooking for years. She was right. It wasn't just about the big goals or the massive innovations that would define his legacy. It was about the human connections, the kindness, and the faith that held everything together. Before Elon could say anything more, the girl spoke up again. "Do you think that, maybe, the necklace helps remind you of what's really important? Like, it's not just about working all the time or getting to Mars. It's about the people who are with you, right?" Elon blinked in surprise. "You're absolutely right," he said quietly, nodding in agreement. "It's about the people. The ones who support you, who believe in you, who remind you that you're more than just your work." The young girl smiled wider, clearly pleased with his response. "It's like having a little piece of hope with you all the time," she said. "A little piece of love, too." Elon's heart warmed at her words. The simplicity of her perspective, the clarity with which she saw the world, was humbling. She had brought him back to a truth he had lost sight of amid the hustle of daily life and the pressure to always be moving forward. "I think you just summed it up perfectly," Elon replied, his voice filled with a quiet sincerity. "It's hope. It's love. It's remembering that we're all in this together." The room had changed in that moment. The audience, once captivated by the idea of groundbreaking technologies and the race to space, was now wrapped in something deeper, something more universal. There was a sense of collective reflection, a sense of unity that transcended the boundaries of innovation and progress. As the girl turned to walk back to her seat, Elon caught a glimpse of her expression. She was just a child, yet she had seen through all the layers of ambition and achievement to uncover something much more profound. It was in her eyes, the understanding that we are all connected, not by the work we do or the status we hold, but by the love and faith that bind us together. And as she returned to her seat, Elon made a silent promise to himself, to never forget the lesson she had taught him. It wasn't about the destination. It was about the people who helped guide you along the way. It was about remembering that even the smallest moments of kindness and connection could change everything. The event ended quietly. There were no grand speeches or applause. People didn't rush to the stage with questions about Mars or electric cars. Instead, there was a soft murmur as the crowd began to file out, their minds likely still dwelling on the conversation they had just witnessed. For Elon, the rest of the day felt like a blur. He answered a few more questions, signed some autographs, and exchanged pleasantries with a few colleagues. But his mind was elsewhere. The moment with the young girl, her innocent question, and the vulnerability he had felt during that brief exchange kept replaying in his thoughts. It wasn't like him to be so open, so raw. But there had been something about her simple question that had cracked open a door he didn't even know existed. Something inside him had shifted. Later that evening, as Elon sat in the quiet of his office, the necklace seemed to burn a hole in his chest, the cross catching the light in a way that was almost ethereal. He reached up and touched it, his fingers grazing the smooth edges of the pendant, as memories flooded back. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, "This cross will remind you that you're never truly alone." He had always worn it as a token of that promise, a piece of faith to hold on to when life got tough. But over the years, as the demands of his career grew and his focus became consumed with the future, he had almost forgotten why it mattered. As he stared at the cross, a wave of emotions hit him, memories of those difficult years when he had poured everything into his work. When he had sacrificed his time, his relationships, and his health, all in the name of something bigger. But the cost had been high. It wasn't the billions in investments or the accolades that kept him going. It wasn't even the success of his companies. It was something far simpler, far more profound: connection. The same connection the young girl had brought to the surface with just one question. The weight of the necklace seemed to settle deeper into his chest. It was as if, in that moment, it wasn't just a symbol of faith. It had become a reminder of everything he had nearly lost. The people in his life, the relationships that had been strained, the moments of doubt when he felt like giving up. And yet, despite it all, he was still here. The necklace reminded him of that strength, the strength he'd inherited from his family, from his upbringing, from the very faith his mother had instilled in him. Elon took a deep breath and closed his eyes, feeling the weight of everything he had built, everything he had been through, wash over him. What truly mattered? For a moment, he wondered if he had been chasing the wrong things all along. He thought about the people who had always been there for him, his family, his close friends, his colleagues. But it wasn't just the people who had been present during the successes. It was those who had been there when things were falling apart, when the failures stacked up, when it felt like the weight of the world was too much to bear. He thought of his mother, her unwavering belief in him, her gentle reminders that love and faith were the foundations upon which everything should stand. He thought of the late nights when he had questioned everything, wondering if the path he had chosen was worth it. He had gotten so lost in the pursuit of success that he had nearly lost sight of the people who mattered most. The truth was, he had been looking for meaning in all the wrong places. He had been so consumed with shaping the future that he had forgotten to look around him at the present. Elon reached for his phone and sent a simple message to his mother. "Thank you for everything, Mom. I think I finally understand what you meant." He hit send and stared at the screen, waiting for a reply. He didn't need words right now. He just needed her to know that, at long last, he was beginning to see the truth. Minutes passed, and his phone buzzed. The message was short, but it carried the weight of everything he needed to hear. "I'm proud of you, Elon. You've always had it in you. Just remember, you're never alone." Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes as he stared at her response. In that moment, something inside him clicked into place. His work, his passion, his drive, they all meant something. But they didn't mean everything. He needed the connections. He needed the people. He needed the love and faith that grounded him. As he sat there, the cross still in his hand, Elon realized something that changed the way he saw everything. The journey he had been on wasn't just about building rockets or cars, it was about understanding the deeper connections that made life worth living. The necklace wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a reminder that no matter how far he reached, he had to remember the roots that kept him grounded. The people who had been with him through thick and thin. The ones who had never let him forget what truly mattered. The days following the event were a whirlwind. Elon continued with his usual schedule, meetings, presentations, strategy sessions, and all the demands that came with running his companies. But something had shifted within him. The weight of that moment, of the young girl's question, had stayed with him, lingering like a soft echo in the background of his mind. As much as he tried to push it aside, the truth was that her words had stirred something deep inside him. It wasn't just the faith and the symbolism of the necklace. It was something more. It was about the realization that his journey wasn't just about building things, it was about the people, the connections, and the love that carried him through the toughest of times. Elon found himself looking at the cross more frequently, as though it were a constant reminder of the deeper meaning behind his work. And with each glance, his mind would drift back to that conversation, the one where a child had shown him something he hadn't truly seen in years. It wasn't just about reaching Mars or colonizing space. It wasn't about the electric revolution or the artificial intelligence that would change the world. It was about remembering the people who made it all possible, the ones who had stood by him, supported him, and believed in him when things got rough. But as he walked through his office one morning, something caught his eye, a small framed photo on the desk. It was of him and his children, taken just a few years ago on a quiet day at home. They were all laughing together, a moment of pure joy, untouched by the pressures of his professional life. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to just be. To remember what it felt like to be present, to appreciate the people who loved him for who he was, not just for what he had achieved. It was a rare feeling, one that he hadn't let himself experience in a long time. Elon picked up the photo and held it in his hands, staring at it for a while. His children's smiles, their eyes full of life and love, reminded him of what he had nearly forgotten, the beauty of the simple things. The small, intimate moments that made life meaningful. It wasn't about how many rockets he could launch, how many cars he could electrify, or how many innovations he could spearhead. It was about the people who shared in those moments, the ones who made the journey worthwhile. He set the photo down and walked over to his desk, where his phone sat, waiting for him. He picked it up, his fingers hovering over the screen. There was a message waiting for him from one of his closest colleagues. It was a simple question about a new project. But for some reason, today, it didn't feel as urgent. Today, the work didn't feel as pressing. He was reminded again of the lesson he had learned, it was all important, but it wasn't everything. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," Elon called, setting the phone down. His assistant entered, holding a small package. "This came for you, Mr. Musk," she said, handing it to him with a smile. Elon raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "Not sure, but it was addressed to you personally." He carefully unwrapped the package, curiosity growing. Inside was a small, simple wooden box. He opened it, and inside lay something unexpected, a new cross necklace. It wasn't like the one he wore, but it was similar enough in design. The craftsmanship was stunning, and it seemed almost familiar. He held it in his hands, admiring the intricate details. There was a small note inside the box. Elon read it quietly to himself. "This is for you. May it remind you always of the people who stand by you, and the strength you carry within." Elon's breath caught in his throat. He knew immediately who had sent it. It was the young girl, the one who had asked about his necklace during the event. A small, unexpected gesture from someone who had no idea how deeply her words had impacted him. A smile tugged at his lips as he stood there, holding the new necklace in his hands. The girl had sent him something as simple as a piece of jewelry, but it was more than that. It was a reminder. A reminder that, despite everything, there was always something or someone to pull him back when he needed it the most. He slipped the new necklace into his pocket, knowing that it would stay with him, just like the cross he wore every day. It was a reminder that love and faith had always been the key to his success. But it was also a reminder that the world didn't revolve around his work. It revolved around the connections he had with others. As the day went on, Elon found himself in a different frame of mind. He was still committed to his work, still driven by the need to innovate and change the world. But there was a shift, something inside him that had been reawakened. He was no longer chasing success for the sake of success. Now, he was focused on the people who had supported him all along. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was the greatest success of all. The next few weeks were filled with a profound sense of reflection for Elon. Life, as usual, was moving at a fast pace. The demands of SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and his countless other ventures didn't let up. But for the first time in a long while, Elon found himself approaching his work with a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about the projects anymore. It was about the journey, the people who had walked it with him, the lessons he had learned, and the love that had always been there, even when he couldn't see it. The necklace, the one the young girl had sent him, sat on his desk, always in sight. It was a small but constant reminder that sometimes, the most profound lessons came in the most unexpected ways. His mind would often wander back to that day when he first looked at the girl and realized how much he had neglected to appreciate the little things in life. Elon hadn't been one to indulge in nostalgia, but in those quiet moments, he couldn't help but think about his early years. He remembered the days when he was just a boy, sitting in a small, humble home, dreaming of a world that didn't seem so far out of reach. His mother, always by his side, had instilled in him a sense of wonder, a belief that anything was possible if you worked hard enough and believed in something bigger than yourself. But somewhere along the way, that sense of wonder had gotten buried under the weight of ambition. It had gotten lost in the grind of creating companies and pushing the boundaries of technology. Elon had often forgotten what it was like to simply be in the moment, to find joy in the small things, family, friends, a shared laugh, a quiet evening at home. It had all become secondary to his endless pursuit of the next big thing. Now, as he sat at his desk, looking at the cross necklace, he realized how far he had strayed from the values that had once shaped him. And more importantly, he understood how much he had hurt those who had loved him the most along the way. His mind drifted back to his children. He thought about their faces, their laughter, and the precious moments he had missed. He thought about his family, his colleagues, and the friends who had always been there for him, offering support when he needed it most. It was easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of success. But Elon knew now that success didn't mean much if you didn't have the people you loved beside you. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. It was in these quiet moments that the weight of everything seemed to settle in. The pressure of being at the forefront of multiple industries, the weight of expectations, the constant drive to do more, be more. It was exhausting. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. What mattered now was balance. It was about finding a way to keep his ambitions alive while also nurturing the relationships that gave his life meaning. Elon thought about the future. The grand visions he had for humanity, colonizing Mars, transitioning to sustainable energy, and revolutionizing space travel. Those dreams hadn't gone away. They were still very much alive, and the work to make them a reality was still at the core of his drive. But now, there was something more. A deeper understanding of what that future should look like. It wasn't just about technological advancements. It was about ensuring that, no matter how far humanity reached, they would always remember what grounded them, the connections, the love, and the faith that would make those advancements truly meaningful. He picked up the phone and made a call to his children. The conversation was simple. He asked them about their day, their school projects, the things that made them laugh. For once, the call wasn't rushed. There was no sense of urgency, no pressing matters to attend to. Just him, his children, and the joy of simply being together. After the call, Elon sat in the stillness of his office, feeling a sense of peace that he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't a peace that came from achievements or recognition. It was a peace that came from knowing that he was starting to find balance, the balance between his work, his family, and his deeper values. As he sat there, the cross around his neck seemed to grow heavier, but in a way that felt comforting. It was a reminder that the journey he was on was not just about reaching for the stars. It was about keeping his feet grounded, about making sure that his legacy was not just about the technology he built, but about the people he had touched along the way. His work would continue. His dreams for the future would persist. But now, Elon knew that he had to carry something more with him. He had to carry the lessons learned from his family, from his faith, and from the simple moments of connection that had shaped who he was. As the weeks passed, Elon found himself at a crossroads, a point where his future felt uncertain but full of possibility. The changes in his mindset, the reflections on his life, and the growing importance of his relationships all seemed to align, guiding him toward a new direction. He had always been someone who focused on the future, the next big thing, the next innovation, the next challenge. But now, he realized that perhaps the most meaningful things in life weren't always about the future. Sometimes, they were about the present. About being grounded, about showing up for the people who mattered, and about allowing himself to be vulnerable, something he had never allowed himself to do fully. Elon knew that his work was important. His dreams of reaching Mars, transitioning to sustainable energy, and changing the course of humanity's future would always drive him. But now, he wanted to ensure that his work was rooted in something more than just ambition. He wanted it to reflect the values of love, compassion, and faith that had started to guide his life in a more profound way. He had been so fixated on the idea of progress, of pushing humanity forward, that he had often forgotten the lessons of patience and presence. The people who worked beside him, the families that supported him, and the communities that believed in his vision, they were the ones who made it all possible. They were the ones who deserved to be at the heart of his journey. Elon's thoughts turned to the young girl who had started it all. Her innocent question about his necklace had shattered the walls he had built around himself. It had reminded him that, despite all his success, there were deeper truths about life that he had neglected. She had shown him the power of simplicity, of focusing on what truly mattered, human connection, love, and the belief that we are all in this together. One evening, as he sat at his desk reflecting on his day, Elon received a message. It was from the young girl's mother. She had written to thank him for the conversation they had shared and to tell him how much it had meant to her daughter. She shared how her daughter had been deeply moved by the kindness and sincerity he had shown, and how that moment had inspired her to believe that anything was possible, no matter where you came from or what you had. Elon read the message, and for the first time in a long while, he felt something shift inside him, a sense of fulfillment that wasn't tied to any achievement or recognition, but to the knowledge that he had made a difference in someone's life. The realization hit him hard. His impact wasn't just in the groundbreaking technologies he created or the ambitious goals he set. It was in the way he connected with others, the way he used his platform to inspire and uplift, and the way he showed up for the people who mattered most. As he put down his phone, Elon made a promise to himself. He would never again lose sight of what truly mattered. The cross around his neck, the gift from the young girl, had become more than just a symbol of faith. It was a reminder of the importance of connection, of love, and of being present in the moment. It was a reminder that, in the end, the most important thing was not how far you reached, but how many lives you touched along the way. From that moment on, Elon began to make changes. He prioritized his time with his family more. He reached out to his colleagues not just for business, but for genuine connection. He used his platform not just to promote his companies, but to inspire others to find meaning in their own lives and to connect with the world around them. He found a new sense of peace. The ambition, the drive, the vision for the future, it was all still there. But now, it was tempered with a deeper understanding. Elon was no longer just looking toward the stars. He was looking around him, at the people who had been with him through it all, and realizing that they were the true stars in his life. As he looked out the window of his office, the sun setting behind the skyline, Elon felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead was still uncertain, but he now knew that the most important part of the journey was the people he shared it with, and the love that had always been there, quietly guiding him forward. It had been several months since that pivotal day when the young girl had asked Elon about his necklace. Since then, life had taken on a new rhythm, one that was more deliberate, more centered on the people who mattered most. Elon had always believed in the power of innovation and technology. He still did. His companies continued to grow, his dreams of a sustainable future and space exploration pushed forward with even greater determination. But something had shifted in the way he approached his work. For the first time, Elon found himself thinking less about the next groundbreaking achievement and more about the legacy he wanted to leave. It wasn't just about being remembered for the companies he had built or the technological revolutions he had spearheaded. It was about the people who had been part of his journey, the ones who had supported him, believed in him, and had helped him become the man he was today. His family was at the heart of this legacy. His children, who had always been his greatest source of joy and inspiration, were now growing older. He realized how important it was to be present for them, to be a father who was not just physically there, but emotionally available. He had missed so much during the years when his focus was solely on his work, but now, he was determined to make up for that time. The simple moments with them, sharing a meal, watching them play, talking about their dreams, were the ones that truly mattered. Elon also found himself thinking more about his colleagues, the people who had helped him bring his visions to life. They weren't just employees or partners, they were a second family. He had always prided himself on pushing his teams to their limits, but now, he realized that true leadership wasn't about pushing people harder. It was about lifting them up, recognizing their strengths, and helping them find fulfillment in their work. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Elon sat on his back porch, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the sky. It was a quiet night, and for the first time in a while, he felt completely at peace. There were no deadlines looming, no urgent emails waiting for him. Just the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the distant hum of the city below. He reached up to touch the cross around his neck, the one that had started it all, the one that had been a symbol of faith, of love, and of the deep connection between all things. He thought about the young girl and her simple question. He thought about how much she had unknowingly changed his life. Without her question, he might have continued down the same path of relentless ambition, losing sight of what truly mattered. But because of that moment, he had begun to see things differently. He had learned to slow down, to appreciate the small moments, and to remember that his true purpose wasn't just to change the world, it was to be a part of something greater than himself. His phone buzzed with a message, a simple text from his children. "Dad, can we talk tonight? I miss you." Elon smiled. It was a reminder that the most important moments in life were the ones that happened right in front of him. He stood up, walked inside, and dialed their number. They talked for hours, sharing stories from their day, their hopes, and their dreams. It was the kind of conversation he had always wanted to have, but never made the time for. Now, it was the most important conversation he would have that day. As the night wore on, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the people in his life who had supported him, who had shown him the true meaning of success. Gratitude for the lessons he had learned, for the way his heart had opened to the things that truly mattered. And gratitude for the chance to start anew, to create a life that wasn't just defined by his work, but by his connections, his love, and his faith. The journey wasn't over. There was still much to do, many more challenges to face, and dreams to chase. But now, Elon knew that the most important part of the journey was the people he shared it with, the ones who made everything worthwhile. He looked up at the stars again, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. The world was vast, full of endless possibilities. But no matter how far he reached, he knew that the greatest legacy he could leave behind was one built on love, connection, and the simple belief that anything was possible if you had the right people by your side. The days blended into weeks, and weeks into months. Elon Musk's life had become a carefully balanced dance between the endless ambition that had propelled him forward and the new, deeper connection to the people and values that had given him a sense of peace. He had become a man reshaped by a series of small, quiet moments, like the conversation he'd had with the young girl about his cross necklace. Elon had always been a visionary, but now, he approached the future with a clearer understanding of what truly mattered. His work at SpaceX, Tesla, and his other ventures remained as important as ever. He still dreamed of a world with clean energy, space exploration, and a better future for humanity. But now, his purpose was more than just innovation. It was about making sure that these dreams didn't leave behind the most precious thing of all, human connection. One evening, he found himself sitting in the same place he had been months ago, staring out at the same stars from his back porch. It was a cool evening, and the wind carried the faint sounds of life from the city below. But tonight, something was different. There was no sense of urgency, no pressure to solve the world's problems. It was just him, in the quiet space of his own mind, reflecting on everything he had learned. He touched the necklace again, the same one that had sparked this journey of introspection and change. The small cross, delicate yet strong, was now more than just a symbol of faith. It was a physical reminder of everything he had rediscovered about himself. The way it had opened his eyes to the importance of love, of family, of taking the time to truly be present. It had been a journey of rediscovery. He had been so focused on his success, on pushing the boundaries of possibility, that he had forgotten what made life worth living. It wasn't about the next great achievement. It wasn't about the race to Mars or the next breakthrough in technology. It was about the people he shared it with, the way those connections shaped the impact he had on the world. And the most profound realization of all? He had learned how to love again. Not just in the way a father loves his children or a partner loves their spouse, but the kind of love that was all-encompassing, the love for humanity, for the world, for the people who mattered in his life. It was a love that had once been overshadowed by ambition, but now had a central place in his heart. His phone buzzed with a text from his children, a simple message saying, "We love you, Dad." He smiled, his heart swelling with emotion. It wasn't the accolades, the recognition, or the achievements that made him feel fulfilled. It was moments like this, the quiet, sincere love that had always been there, waiting for him to embrace it. In that moment, Elon knew that his legacy was no longer just about building companies or revolutionizing industries. His true legacy would be about the lives he touched, the hearts he had opened, and the love he had given and received. It would be about making sure the people who mattered to him knew how much they meant, and how much they had shaped him into the man he had become. He stood up from his chair and walked into the house, where the warmth of his family awaited. His children were gathered in the living room, laughing and talking about their day. Elon joined them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he felt completely content. There were no grand plans, no ambitious speeches. Just the simple joy of being present with the people he loved. As he sat down with them, he realized that this was the beginning of something new. It wasn't just about the future anymore. It was about the present. About living fully, loving deeply, and finding peace in the here and now. He didn't need to chase after something else. He had everything he needed right here. The journey had come full circle. The vision that had once driven him had evolved into something deeper, more meaningful. Elon Musk's path was no longer just about pushing the boundaries of technology or reaching for the stars. It was about creating a world where love, connection, and purpose guided every decision. And as he looked at his children, his family, and the people who had been with him every step of the way, he knew that he had found something even more profound than the stars. He had found his place in the world, a place built not on success alone, but on love, connection, and the understanding that anything truly worth achieving could only be accomplished with the people who stood beside you. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?